Rome, 74 BCE. Dust swirled through the Forum Boarium as Marcus Severus limped toward the auction block. The crowd parted, eyes lingering on his scarred face, whispering about the once legendary centurion now spending his days in solitude. When the veiled woman was presented, thin chains at her wrists, the auctioneer announced her debt-condemned status with theatrical disdain. The crowd howled with laughter as Marcus emptied his coin purse, his entire military pension, for a slave whose face no one had seen. But Marcus didn't lead her home. Instead, he walked straight to the praetor's tribunal, the curious crowd following like a human tide. What could drive a decorated soldier to spend everything on a faceless woman in chains? And what secrets lay hidden behind that silken veil? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The bronze military diploma felt heavy in Marcus's pocket as he stood before the praetor's tribunal. Its engraved surface, proof of 25 years' service to Rome, had earned him citizenship and respect. Yet today he needed more than respect. He needed justice. "State your business, centurion," the praetor called, eyeing the veiled woman beside Marcus. "I petition for manumitio," Marcus replied, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet forum. "Freedom for this woman." The praetor frowned. "You've just purchased her. Why free her immediately?" Marcus's hand drifted to his scarred cheek, remembering the Parthian arrow that had ended his military career 6 years ago. The physician had said he was fortunate. An inch higher and he would have lost an eye. Instead, he'd lost something else, his place in the world. "Because no Roman should be enslaved through fraud," Marcus answered. The crowd murmured. The praetor leaned forward. "Bold accusation. What evidence supports it?" "This." Marcus produced a worn tablet. "Records from the Temple of Saturn. The debt claimed against her doesn't exist." "Many debts don't appear in official records," countered the praetor. "Private loans." "Then let the creditor come forward with his documentation," Marcus challenged. "In the meantime, I claim my right as her purchaser to free her." The praetor sighed, gesturing to his clerk. "The law permits it. Prepare the manumission documents." As the clerk worked, Marcus turned to the woman. Her shoulders had straightened beneath the plain stola, but her face remained hidden behind the silken veil. "Why?" she whispered, voice low enough that only he could hear. "You don't know me." "I knew your father," Marcus replied quietly, "and I recognized the seal on your chains." The clerk approached with tablets and stylus. "The freedwoman's name?" Marcus hesitated, glancing at the veiled figure. With deliberate motion, she reached up and lifted the veil herself. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even the praetor stood from his seat. Her face was striking, fine-boned and proud, with intelligent eyes that assessed the crowd without fear. But it wasn't merely her beauty that caused the forum to fall silent. It was recognition. "Livia Valeria," she stated clearly, "daughter of Senator Quintus Valerius." The forum erupted. The praetor's gavel pounded for order as the crowd pressed closer, their earlier mockery forgotten in the shock of revelation. Marcus maintained his position beside her, scanning for threats amidst the chaos. "Impossible," the praetor finally managed. "Senator Valerius's daughter disappeared 3 months ago while traveling to their villa in Baiae, and appeared in a slave market today," Marcus said grimly. "An interesting coincidence." The praetor's eyes narrowed. "This requires investigation." Guard detail. Uniformed men surrounded them as the praetor addressed the crowd. "This tribunal is adjourned until tomorrow. The woman claiming to be Livia Valeria will remain under protective custody until her identity is confirmed." "I stay with her," Marcus stated firmly, hand moving toward the gladius he no longer wore. The praetor assessed him, the military bearing still evident despite civilian clothes, the scars that spoke of battle experience. "Very well. Both of you will be accommodated in the magistrate's quarters. Guards, escort them." As they followed the guards through the stunned crowd, Livia spoke under her breath. "You didn't answer my question. Why would you spend your entire pension on a slave, only to free her immediately?" Marcus kept his eyes forward. Because 20 years ago, your father saved my life at Orazio. I was a common soldier. He was a military tribune. He could have fled with the other officers when the Cimbri broke our lines. Instead, he organized a fighting retreat that saved 500 men. So this is about repaying a debt? Marcus glanced at her. It's about justice. Someone went to great lengths to erase a senator's daughter. I intend to discover who and why. Then we are allies in this purpose, Livia said, matching his stride despite her recent captivity. But understand this, centurion. I am no damsel requiring rescue. I seek not just freedom, but vengeance. Marcus nodded, noting the steel in her voice. Then we understand each other perfectly. Dawn light filtered through the narrow window of the magistrate's quarters as Livia traced her finger along the forged debt ledger Marcus had obtained from the slave merchant. The parchment felt rough beneath her fingertip, each fraudulent entry an insult. The handwriting is consistent throughout, she observed. Whoever created this document is skilled but made one critical error. Marcus leaned closer. What error? My father's seal. She pointed to the wax impression at the bottom. It's genuine but outdated. Father commissioned a new signet after his appointment to the senatorial committee on Eastern trade last year. This impression is from his old ring. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Few would notice such a detail, which is precisely why they thought they could succeed. Livia set the ledger aside. The question remains, who is they? Gaius Severnius, Marcus answered, his voice hardening. Merchant, moneylender, and supplier to 3 legions in Asia Minor. You know him? By reputation. His wealth has tripled in 5 years through government contracts. Contracts secured through connections rather than merit. His ships carry grain, weapons, and occasionally, Marcus's eyes met hers, human cargo. Livia's expression remained composed, though her knuckles whitened. I was traveling to our villa in Baiae when our party was attacked. I assumed simple bandits at first. They killed my guards and took me to a villa near Neapolis. I was kept there until 3 days ago, when I was transported to Rome. Did you see Severnius? No, but I overheard conversations. They needed me to disappear, but death was too risky. My father has too many allies who would demand investigation. Selling me to an eastern province was their plan. Marcus frowned. Then why bring you to Rome's busiest slave market? Something changed. Livia stood, pacing the small room. Something urgent. They needed to dispose of me quickly, even at greater risk of discovery. Your father returns from Hispania next week, Marcus mused. Perhaps they needed you gone before then. Livia paused by the window, gazing toward the Senate building visible in the distance. You still haven't explained how you knew to find me. Marcus joined her, keeping a respectful distance. I didn't. I was at the market looking for my former orderly, Titus. He disappeared 3 weeks ago. After mentioning he had documents to show me about supply irregularities in the Eastern campaigns. You think the cases are connected? I think nothing happens by coincidence when politics and profit intersect. Marcus turned to face her. Tell me about your education. The question surprised her. My father believes daughters deserve the same education as sons. I studied rhetoric, mathematics, history, and law with the finest tutors in Rome. Law, Marcus repeated. That knowledge may prove our greatest weapon. A knock interrupted them. The praetor's clerk entered with a scroll. The praetor will see you now, he announced. A messenger has arrived from Senator Valerius. As they followed the clerk through marble corridors, Livia spoke quietly. My captors made one fundamental mistake. What's that? They assumed wealth and privilege had made me soft. Her voice was calm but carried an edge sharper than any gladius. They never imagined that the daughter of Quintus Valerius would memorize their conversations, count the steps between chambers, or observe the patterns of guards and servants. Marcus studied her with newfound appreciation. You were gathering intelligence. I was preparing for this moment. Livia straightened her borrowed stola as they approached the praetor's chambers. Severnius doesn't realize he's created his own destruction. Be cautious, Marcus warned. Men like Severnius have allies throughout Rome. As does my father, Livia countered. And now it seems I have you. Marcus nodded, his scarred face solemn. Until this matter is resolved. Then let us hope resolution includes justice, Livia replied as the doors opened before them. And not merely its appearance. In the governor's villa in Tarraco, Senator Quintus Valerius crushed the message scroll in his fist, his signet ring gleaming in the lamplight. The bearer of the news, a young courier who had ridden for 6 days straight, stood nervously at attention. "Read it to me again," Valerius commanded, his voice dangerously quiet. The courier swallowed. "Your daughter Livia has been found in Rome's Forum Boarium, sold as a debt slave. A former centurion purchased and freed her. She awaits at the praetor's quarters. The matter draws public attention." Valerius rose, a tall man whose 60 years had not diminished his commanding presence. "Prepare my escort. We leave for Ostia within the hour." "But, Senator, the treaty negotiations are concluded as of this moment." Valerius slid the heavy signet ring from his finger, holding it up to catch the light. "This ring has been worn by Valerie for 3 centuries. It represents a legacy of honor that will not be tarnished by political games, while my daughter stands humiliated in a slave market." As servants rushed to prepare for departure, Valerius stared at the map of the empire spread across his table. "Who would dare?" he murmured. "And why now?" Back in Rome, Marcus and Livia found temporary sanctuary in the modest insula of Lucius Petronius, a former comrade-in-arms who had served as Marcus's optio during the Pontic campaigns. "Not exactly senatorial accommodations," Lucius apologized, gesturing around the small apartment with its simple furnishings. "It's perfect," Livia replied, accepting a cup of watered wine. Anonymous. After sharing a simple meal, Lucius departed for his night watch duty as a customs inspector at the Tiber docks, leaving Marcus and Livia alone with their plans. "The praetor has confirmed your identity," Marcus observed. "Yet you suggested we avoid your family's domus. Why?" Livia set down her cup. "Because someone very powerful arranged my disappearance. Until we know who, I trust no one associated with my father's household." "You suspect someone close to him?" "I suspect everyone," she answered simply, "including, with respect, you." Marcus nodded, accepting her caution. "Then why agree to stay here?" "Because unlike everyone else, your actions align with your words." Livia studied him across the table. "You spent your entire pension to purchase a veiled slave, then immediately sought her freedom. Either you are the most honorable man in Rome or the most foolish." A rare smile crossed Marcus's scarred face. "Most would say the latter. Then most would be wrong." Livia leaned forward. "Now tell me why you were truly at that slave market." Marcus hesitated, then reached into his tunic and withdrew a small lead seal. "My orderly Titus was investigating missing supplies, weapons meant for the Armenian frontier that never arrived. 3 weeks ago, he discovered this attached to falsified shipping manifests." Livia examined the seal. "Severnius's mark." "Yes, Titus disappeared the next day. I've spent weeks searching slave markets, fearing he'd been sold to the mines or worse. And instead you found me." "A fortunate coincidence," Marcus agreed, "though I still hope to find Titus." Livia set the seal down between them. "Not coincidence. Connection. Your Titus discovered Severnius's fraud in military supplies. I was abducted after my father was appointed to oversee Eastern trade contracts." Understanding dawned in Marcus's eyes. The senatorial committee would review all major military supply contracts, including those held by Severnius. Livia's gaze was steady. "My father is known for his intolerance of corruption. So Severnius sought to control him through you, or remove me as warning." Livia wrapped her shawl tighter. "Either way, we've exposed part of his scheme by accident, which makes our position precarious." Marcus nodded. "We need evidence that will stand in court, and allies we can trust." "I know where to start," Livia said. a hint of determination lighting her eyes. "There's a scribe at the Treasury Archives who owes my father a favor. If Severnius has been defrauding the Republic, the numbers won't lie." Marcus stood, checking the street through the narrow window. "We'll go at first light. For now, rest. I'll keep watch." Livia studied him in the fading light. "Why risk yourself for this cause, centurion?" "Truly?" Marcus turned from the window, his scarred profile outlined against the dying sun. "Because 25 years in, Rome's legions taught me that some things are worth fighting for. Justice is one of them." The scroll containing the 12 tables, Rome's ancient legal code, lay open on the worn table in Titus Horatius's modest office near the Forum. Morning light streamed through the high windows, illuminating dust motes that danced above the parchment as the advocate's gnarled finger traced the relevant passage. "Nexum," Horatius said, the word rolling off his tongue with the authority of 30 years arguing before Rome's courts. "Debt bondage. Legal, but strictly regulated." Marcus leaned forward. "And in this case? Irregular at best, criminal at worst." Horatius glanced at Livia, who sat with perfect posture despite the office's uncomfortable benches. "The alleged debt must be properly documented, witnessed, and registered with the urban praetor. The documents you've shown me fail on all counts." "Yet they were enough to enslave a senator's daughter," Livia observed. Horatius nodded, his balding head catching the light. "Because someone paid handsomely for officials to overlook discrepancies. The slave merchant, Balbus. He's Severnius's man." "His cousin," Marcus confirmed. "They share business interests throughout Latium." "Convenient." Horatius rolled the scroll closed. "The legal path is clear enough. We challenge the validity of the debt instrument, demand examination of the original documents, and petition for recognition of your true status." "And when Severnius produces forged originals?" Livia asked. "We'll need witnesses," Horatius admitted. "Someone from the transaction chain willing to testify about the fraud." Marcus frowned. "Anyone involved would fear Severnius's retribution." "Precisely our challenge." Horatius stood, stretching his back with a grimace. 20 years in the legions left me with battle scars, Marcus. 20 years in the courts have taught me that witnesses fear powerful men more than they respect truth. "Then we must make truth more compelling than fear," Livia said, rising to examine the collection of legal texts lining the office walls. She selected one, opening to a marked page. "The Lex Aquilia provides remedy for property damage through fraud. Could we adapt its principles?" Horatius's eyebrows rose. "You're familiar with the statute?" "My tutor was Gaius Manilius before his appointment to the praetorship." Livia continued scanning the text. "He believed women should understand the laws that govern their lives, even if we cannot vote on them." Horatius exchanged a glance with Marcus. "Impressive. Yes, we could argue that Severnius's actions constituted damage to the Valerian family's property and reputation." A knock interrupted them. Horatius's clerk entered, his expression worried. "A messenger from Severnius requests an audience with the lady," he said. "He waits outside." Marcus moved protectively toward Livia, but she raised a hand to stop him. "Bring him in," she directed. The messenger entered, a well-dressed Greek slave carrying a sealed tablet. He bowed deeply to Livia. "My master extends greetings to the daughter of Senator Valerius and wishes to express his shock and dismay at her recent ordeal." "How thoughtful," Livia replied coolly, "particularly since your master orchestrated that ordeal." The messenger's practiced smile didn't waver. "My master wishes to clarify that any transaction involving the lady was conducted without his knowledge by subordinates who have since been disciplined. He offers complete restoration of dignity and compensation for distress." "How generous," Livia said. "And what does he request in return for this generosity?" "Only discretion, my lady. Public proceedings would embarrass all parties unnecessarily." Horatius stepped forward. "Your master offers to settle privately?" "With appropriate compensation," the messenger confirmed, offering the sealed tablet. "The terms are most favorable." Livia accepted the tablet but didn't break the seal. Tell your master I will consider his offer after consultation with my father, who returns to Rome shortly. After the messenger departed, Marcus turned to her. You're not seriously considering his offer? Of course not. Livia broke the seal, scanning the document's contents. But his approach tells us something important. He's worried, Horatius observed. He's desperate, Livia corrected, passing the tablet to him. Look at the sum he offers. 5 times the standard compensation for false enslavement. Marcus peered over Horatius's shoulder at the figure. Why not simply have us killed if the stakes are so high? Because my death would trigger an investigation he couldn't control, Livia said. And because... She stopped suddenly, her eyes widening. The document, the handwriting. Horatius examined it closely. What about it? I recognize it from letters I glimpsed during my captivity. Livia's voice had grown urgent. This isn't from Severus. He's merely the visible face of the conspiracy. Then who? Marcus asked. Someone with access to the Senate's private records, Livia said grimly. Someone who knew exactly when my father would be away from Rome. Twilight settled over Rome as Marcus and Livia navigated the narrow streets of the Subura district. Oil lamps flickered to life in windows above, casting wavering shadows across walls covered with electoral graffiti and merchant advertisements. The bronze dagger concealed beneath Marcus's tunic pressed reassuringly against his ribs, a precaution he'd insisted upon after leaving Horatius's office. The treasury scribe lives just beyond the next intersection, Livia murmured, her plain stola and modest veil rendering her anonymous among the evening crowd. Demetrius was my father's secretary before securing his position in the public records office. Marcus nodded, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. The Subura housed everyone from craftsmen to criminals, its twisting alleys forming a labyrinth where danger and opportunity intertwined. You're certain he can be trusted? With my life, Livia affirmed. He was a slave in our household until my father freed him for saving my brother from drowning. His loyalty is beyond question. They turned into a narrower passage, the sounds of the main thoroughfare fading behind them. 3 men loitered at the next corner, their casual posture belied by the alertness in their stance. Marcus touched Livia's elbow lightly, guiding her toward a different route. Not that way, he said quietly. Livia followed his lead without question. You see something? Military boots beneath civilian tunics, Marcus replied. Recently issued, the leather still holds its polish. Soldiers, praetorians by their bearing. Off-duty and out of uniform in the Subura means unofficial business. They circled back toward a more populated street, but found 2 more men blocking that path. Marcus's hand moved to his concealed dagger as he scanned for escape routes. We're being herded, he observed, voice calm despite the rising danger. Livia nodded almost imperceptibly. 3rd exit on the left. It leads to the back of the cloth merchant's quarter. I used to visit with my mother as a child. They altered course again, maintaining an unhurried pace that wouldn't betray their awareness. The path narrowed further, buildings pressing close on either side, laundry hanging overhead between upper stories. The perfect place for an ambush. As if summoned by the thought, a figure dropped from above, landing between them and their escape route. Metal glinted in the dim light, a sicca, the curved blade favored by professional killers. Without hesitation, Marcus pushed Livia behind him and drew his dagger, dropping into a combat stance. The assassin lunged, blade slicing air where Marcus had stood a heartbeat earlier. 25 years of battlefield instincts took command as Marcus parried the second thrust, stepped inside the attacker's guard, and drove his own blade upward beneath the ribs. The man gasped, eyes widening in surprise before glazing over. Marcus lowered the body silently to the ground as footsteps approached from behind. More coming, he warned, retrieving his dagger. This way, Livia said, already moving toward a weathered door in the alley wall. She knocked in a precise pattern, 3 rapid taps, pause, 2 more. The door opened to reveal an elderly woman who took one look at their situation and gestured them inside. Quickly, child. Once inside the modest apartment above a textile shop, Livia embraced the woman. "Gratitude, Helena. We're in some trouble." "So I see," the woman replied, peering through a narrow window at the men now searching the alley below. "Friends of yours?" "The opposite," Marcus said, cleaning his blade on a cloth. "My apologies for bringing danger to your door." Helena waved away his concern. "Any friend of the Valerie is welcome here. My late husband wove the senator's ceremonial toga when he took office." As Helena busied herself with drawing curtains and preparing tea, Marcus turned to Livia. "This changes our approach. They weren't trying to capture you this time." "No," Livia agreed soberly. "Severnius has abandoned subtlety for direct elimination, which means he fears what we might discover more than he fears the consequences of our deaths." Livia accepted the steaming cup Helena offered. "We need to reach Demetrius before they do." "Not tonight," Marcus countered. "The streets will be watched. We wait until morning when the markets open and provide cover." "And our friend in the alley?" "Will be gone by now," Marcus said grimly. "Bodies in the Subura rarely remain undiscovered or unclaimed for long." Livia studied him across the small room. "You killed without hesitation." "I've had practice," Marcus replied simply. "Does that disturb you?" "No," she said after a moment. "It reminds me that in Rome's underbelly, philosophical debates about justice matter less than the skill to stay alive while pursuing it. A pragmatic perspective for a patrician's daughter. 3 months in captivity adjusts one's perspective considerably," Livia replied, her eyes meeting his with unflinching directness. "As does watching a man die to protect you." The Valerian domus on the Palatine Hill hummed with activity as servants rushed to prepare for their master's return. Couriers darted in and out, delivering messages to allied families that the senator had arrived at Ostia and would reach Rome by midday. In the atrium, a dozen clients already waited, hoping for an early audience. Marcus observed it all from across the street, his plain tunic and worn cloak rendering him invisible among the tradesmen and petitioners who constantly orbited the homes of the powerful. The patrician toga, symbol of Livia's class and the gulf between them, lay folded across a marble bench just inside the entrance, a reminder of the world to which she would return. "He's coming," Livia said beside him, her borrowed clothing now replaced with garments befitting her station, delivered by trusted servants at dawn. "That's his standard." Down the sloping street, a senatorial procession approached. Lictors with ceremonial fasces cleared the way before a litter carried by 8 strong bearers. The gathered crowd parted respectfully, some reaching out to touch the hem of the purple-striped toga worn by the stern-faced man who descended at the domus entrance. Senator Quintus Valerius Maximus had arrived. Livia stepped forward from the shadows, moving with measured dignity into her father's line of sight. The senator froze, his composure cracking for just an instant before he strode toward her with arms outstretched. "My daughter," he said simply, embracing her before the gathered witnesses. Marcus watched their reunion from a respectful distance, noting the subtle political calculation even in this emotional moment. The public restoration of the Valerian daughter to her rightful place, a visible reclamation of family honor. A message to Rome that the Valerie remained unbroken. Inside the domus, after the public performance concluded, the senator led them to his private study. Guards posted outside ensured their privacy as he truly embraced his daughter, the politician's mask falling away to reveal a father's relief. "I feared I had lost you," Valerius said, his voice rough with emotion, "when your escort was found slaughtered on the Appian Way." "I never lost faith that you would search for me," Livia replied. The senator's eyes hardened. "Every resource at my disposal has been dedicated to finding you. Every favor called in. Every informant questioned. And yet it was this man," he turned to Marcus, "who succeeded where the Senate's reach failed. I am in your debt, centurion." Marcus bowed slightly. "There is no debt, Senator. I served Rome for 25 years. Her citizens deserve protection." "Few veterans maintain such idealism," Valerius observed, studying Marcus's scarred face. "Especially those who sacrificed as much as you clearly have." Father, Livia interjected. There is much you need to know. My captivity was no random banditry. For the next quarter hour, they detailed their discoveries, the fraudulent debt, Severnius's involvement, the connection to military supply contracts, and the assassination attempt. The senator listened without interruption, his expression darkening progressively. Severnius, he finally said, the name like poison on his tongue. His consortium bid for the Armenian supply contracts last month. I delayed approval pending investigation of certain irregularities, which gives him motive, Marcus noted. But not the means or opportunity, Valerius countered. Severnius is wealthy but lacks the political connections to orchestrate something this complex. Someone with access to senatorial schedules and legal procedures must be involved. A senator, Livia suggested, or a high-ranking magistrate. Valerius paced the study, the weight of his office evident in his bearing. This complicates matters considerably. How so? Marcus asked. The senator paused, weighing his words carefully. Because half the Senate benefits from military procurement contracts. Exposing Severnius could unravel a web of corruption that implicates many powerful men. Men who would rather see my daughter dead than their profits threatened. He turned to Marcus. You've done Rome a service, centurion, but your involvement ends here. This becomes a matter for the Senate and my family. Father, Livia began to protest. My decision is final, Valerius stated firmly. I've arranged a substantial reward for Marcus Severus. Enough to restore the fortune his injury cost him. Marcus straightened, his military bearing returning. With respect, Senator, I did not act for reward. Nevertheless, you shall have one. Valerius turned away, clearly considering the matter closed. Now, if you'll excuse us, I must speak with my daughter privately about family matters. The dismissal was unmistakable. Marcus bowed formally to both, his eyes meeting Livia's briefly before he turned to leave. Centurion, Valerius called as Marcus reached the door. Rome thanks you for your service. As do I. Marcus nodded once and departed, leaving Livia standing in her father's study, surrounded once more by the trappings of privilege that suddenly felt more confining than her chains had at the slave market. The merchant quarter bustled with midday activity as Marcus moved through the crowd, a clay gossip tablet tucked beneath his arm. These ubiquitous neighborhood message boards, inscribed with everything from poetry to political commentary, served as Rome's nervous system, transmitting rumors faster than any official courier. Today's tablets overflowed with speculations about Livia Valeria's miraculous return. Some versions praised the senator's influence in securing his daughter's freedom. Others whispered of secret ransoms paid. None mentioned a scarred centurion. Marcus paused at a wine shop frequented by merchants' clerks, where conversations flowed as freely as the house vintage. He ordered a cup and settled in a corner, listening. Severnius closed his warehouse yesterday. A heavy-set man with ink-stained fingers was saying. Sent half his slaves to his country estate. Preparing for trouble? His companion asked. Preparing to flee, more likely. The Valerian girl's return has powerful men worried. Marcus sipped his wine, committing every word to memory. 3 days had passed since Senator Valerius dismissed him, but Marcus had continued his investigation regardless. Some compulsions ran deeper than orders. A shadow fell across his table. Mind if I join you, centurion? Marcus looked up to find Titus Horatius, the advocate, standing with his own wine cup. Didn't expect to see you still in Rome, Horatius commented, taking a seat without waiting for invitation. Rumor had it you'd accepted a substantial reward and would be purchasing a comfortable farm in Campania by now. Rumors rarely capture truth's complexity, Marcus replied. Horatius smiled thinly. Indeed, like the rumor that Senator Valerius has agreed to meet privately with Severnius tomorrow, or that charges of fraud against the merchant may be quietly dropped in exchange for certain considerations. Marcus set down his cup. What considerations? Political support for the senator's provincial governance bill, and a marriage alliance between the Valerian and Servilii families. It seems young Servilia Nepta, Severnius's niece, would make an advantageous match for the senator's son. You're well informed for someone no longer involved in the case. I maintain an interest in justice, Horatius replied. As apparently do you. Marcus studied the advocate. What do you want, Horatius? To share information. The senator may have dismissed us both, but Livia Valeria has not. He slid a small sealed tablet across the table. She requested I give you this, and to tell you she will be at the Temple of Vesta this afternoon, making an offering for her safe return. After Horatius departed, Marcus broke the seal. Inside, in elegant script, *, the scribe Demetrius will meet you at midday. Treasury Archives, lower level. Ask for records of the Armenian frontier supplies. *. The Treasury Archives smelled of dust and secrets. Demetrius, a thin, nervous man with the precise movements of someone who handled delicate documents daily, led Marcus through narrow aisles of shelved scrolls, speaking in hushed tones. The supply contracts are organized by province and year, he explained, selecting several scrolls. Armenia lasts 3 years, and these, he added another set, are the corresponding payment authorizations. They spread the documents on a small table tucked between shelves. Marcus scanned the military manifests with a veteran's eye. The quantities are inflated, he noted. This shows delivery of 600 gladii to the 3rd cohort at Artaxata, but standard complement would be 400 at most. Demetrius nodded. And the payment authorizations match the inflated figures. Who verifies actual delivery? Provincial quartermasters, Demetrius replied, who report to provincial governors, who are appointed by senatorial committees, Marcus finished, like the Eastern Trade Committee that Senator Valerius now chairs. Precisely. Demetrius produced another document from his tunic. This arrived yesterday from Pontus. Customs declaration for a shipment from Severnius's company. Note the discrepancy. Marcus compared the figures. The shipment leaving Ostia contained 800 shields. Only 500 arrived in Pontus, with customs paid only on the 500. The question is, where did the other 300 go? And who profited from their sale? Marcus added grimly. A shadow moved at the end of the aisle. Demetrius quickly gathered the scrolls. You should go. Meet me tonight at the Dolphin Tavern near the Tiber docks. I'll bring copies. As Marcus emerged into the sunlight, a patrician litter passed, its curtains partially open. For a brief moment his eyes met Livia's. No words were exchanged, but her slight nod conveyed everything necessary. The investigation continued, with or without senatorial approval. The atrium of Senator Lucius Calpurnius Piso overflowed with morning visitors. Clients clutched their patron's tesserae, small clay tokens that proved their relationship to the powerful senator. As they waited for their daily greeting and perhaps a small favor or coin, Marcus observed from the periphery, feeling the weight of his own tessera, recently delivered by a Valerian household slave. He hadn't expected Senator Valerius to formalize their connection through the patronage system. The small clay disc stamped with the Valerian eagle represented both opportunity and obligation, a complex relationship of reciprocal favors that bound Roman society together. The centurion attends with the common clients? How unexpected. The sardonic voice belonged to Servius Tadius, a minor magistrate known for his connections to the shipping guilds. I would have thought your services to the Valerian daughter warranted more privileged treatment. Marcus kept his expression neutral. I'm here at Senator Valerius's invitation to discuss military matters. Of course, Tadius smirked. Military matters. Though I understand you're investigating certain financial discrepancies as well. Dangerous waters for a retired soldier. Before Marcus could respond, a steward approached. Centurion Severus? Senator Piso will see you now. Marcus followed the steward past dozens of waiting clients to a private reception room where Senators Piso and Valerius conversed in low tones. They fell silent as he entered. Ah, Marcus Severus. Piso greeted him, a jovial man whose portly appearance belied his shrewd political mind. Quintus has told me of your service to his family. Most commendable. Marcus bowed respectfully. "Senator, please sit." Valerius gestured to a chair. "I've asked you here because Senator Piso chairs the Military Procurement Committee. The discrepancies you've uncovered regarding the Armenian supplies fall under his purview." Piso nodded gravely. "Concerning allegations, if true, they represent not merely fraud but potentially treason, as they weaken our frontier defenses." "The evidence is compelling," Marcus replied, producing copies of the documents Demetrius had provided. Military manifests showing inflated quantities, customs declarations revealing missing shipments, payment authorizations exceeding actual deliveries. As the senators examined the documents, Marcus noticed the subtle exchange of glances between them, the silent communication of men accustomed to navigating political implications beneath every action. "This evidence implicates more than just Severnius," Piso finally said. "The authorization signatures include members of the Senate." "3 members of your own committee," Valerius added pointedly. Piso's expression hardened. "My committee serves Rome faithfully, as do most of its members," Valerius conceded. "But corruption spreads like rot in timber, Lucius. We must excise it completely." "At what cost?" Piso challenged. "A public investigation would undermine confidence in the Senate itself. The plebeians already resent our privileges. To expose such corruption would feed the populist demagogues. And to ignore it feeds the corruption itself," Valerius countered. Their debate continued, revealing to Marcus the complex calculus of Roman politics. How justice balanced against stability, truth against public confidence, individual crimes against institutional preservation. A soft knock interrupted them. Livia entered, her formal stola and carefully arranged hair marking her return to patrician life. "Father, Senator Piso?" She greeted them before acknowledging Marcus with a slight nod. "I apologize for the intrusion, but I've received information you should hear immediately." "Speak freely," her father permitted. "Severnius is called in substantial debts from 3 senatorial families," she reported. "The Cassii, Memii, and Acilii have all received demands for immediate repayment." Piso paled visibly. "All 3 sit on the Eastern Trade Committee, and all 3 originally opposed my appointment as chairman," Valerius added grimly. "Severnius applies financial pressure to build political alliance against us." "There's more," Livia continued. "He's scheduled a private auction tomorrow. Sources in the merchant quarter say he's liquidating substantial assets." "Preparing to flee," Marcus concluded. "Or preparing for war," Valerius corrected. "Political war." Piso rose heavily. "This changes matters. I cannot officially sanction an investigation without committee approval, but—" He hesitated, then seemed to reach a decision. "My nephew commands the urban cohort. He can assign men to monitor Severnius, discreetly." "And the treasury evidence?" Marcus asked. "Must remain confidential until we determine which senators are compromised," Piso insisted. "This requires surgical precision, not a gladiator's hack." As they departed, Livia fell into step beside Marcus in the colonnade outside. "You're disappointed," she observed quietly. "I expected justice, not political maneuvering." "In Rome, they're often the same," she replied. "My father and Piso seek justice through channels that won't collapse the system itself, while Severnius uses those same channels to escape consequences." Livia's hand briefly touched his arm. "Then we must ensure those channels lead him to justice, not escape." The sealed testimony scroll sat on the table between them, its official wax seal still warm. Inside lay the sworn statement of Milo Celius, former clerk to Severnius and now the key to unraveling the entire conspiracy. The small room above the Dolphin Tavern smelled of fear and cheap wine as the man huddled in his chair, eyes darting between Marcus, Livia, and Horatius. "It's done," Horatius confirmed, finishing the last legal formalities. "Your testimony is now registered with the urban praetor under seal. If anything happens to you, this document will be opened and read publicly." "That won't protect me from Severnius?" Milo muttered, hands trembling as he accepted the cup of wine Livia offered. "No," Marcus agreed bluntly. But this will. He tossed a small leather pouch onto the table. It landed with a heavy clink of coins. Passage to Alexandria. A new name. Enough denarii to establish yourself as a scribe. Milo stared at the pouch. Why would you do this for me? We're not, Livia replied. We're doing it for Rome. Your testimony helps us pursue justice. It had taken 3 days to find Milo after Demetrius identified him as the clerk who processed the fraudulent supply manifests. Marcus had tracked him to a gambling house in the Subura, where mounting debts had made him desperate enough to be approached. Tell us again about the ledgers, Marcus prompted. The complete version this time. Milo nodded nervously. Each military supply contract had 2 versions. The official one registered with the Senate showed the full quantity and cost. The actual shipment manifest showed the reduced quantities. The difference was divided, half to Severus, half distributed among his senatorial partners. And my abduction? Livia asked. How did that connect? Your father's appointment threatened everything. As head of the Eastern Trade Committee, he would have authority to audit all contracts. Severus wanted leverage to control him. Milo hesitated. But there was another factor. Senator Valerius had begun requesting specific records shortly before. Your abduction. Records concerning property holdings in Campania. Marcus and Livia exchanged glances. This was new information. What properties? Horatius asked. Coastal villas, farmlands, several warehouses, all purchased within the last 3 years through proxy owners. All ultimately controlled by a single senator. Which senator? Marcus pressed. Milo's eyes darted nervously. I don't know. Truly. Severus kept that information compartmentalized. Only his personal secretary would know. Titus, Marcus said suddenly. My former orderly was investigating missing supplies before he disappeared. He must have discovered the connection. A commotion downstairs interrupted them. Shouts, the crash of breaking pottery, heavy footsteps on the stairs. Marcus moved to the door, dagger drawn, as Horatius quickly hid the testimony scroll inside his tunic. The door burst open to reveal Lucius Petronius, Marcus's former optio, now in the uniform of the urban cohort. Marcus, he gasped, you need to leave, now. Severus's men are searching every tavern in the district. They know you have his clerk. How? Marcus demanded. Someone betrayed your location, for men are already downstairs. I claimed I was here on official business, but they won't be fooled long. Marcus made an instant assessment. Horatius, take Milo out the back window. Get him to the ship. Livia, you go with Lucius. Your father's name will protect you both. And you? Livia challenged. I'll provide a distraction. Marcus's scarred face showed no fear, only tactical calculation. Meet at Horatius's office at dawn. Livia held his gaze for a moment, then reached up impulsively and kissed him. A brief, fierce gesture that surprised them both. Don't you dare die, centurion. After they had gone, Marcus took a deep breath, remembering old battlefield preparations. He overturned the table, creating a barricade near the door, then positioned himself with calculated advantage. When the first attacker burst in, Marcus was ready. The ensuing fight was brief but violent. His years of combat experience proved decisive against hired thugs who relied on intimidation more than skill. Within minutes, 2 lay unconscious, 1 had fled, and the 4th found himself pinned against the wall with Marcus's dagger at his throat. Who is Severus protecting? Marcus demanded. Which senator controls those Campanian properties? The man's eyes widened. I don't know. We were just told to find the clerk. Who else knows about Livia Valeria's abduction? Who gave the orders? Severus only deals with one man on these matters. The thug gasped. Servius Tadius. He carries the messages to and from the Senate. Marcus released him with a shove. Tell Severus his clerk is beyond reach, but his secrets aren't. And tell Tadius that a centurion sends his regards. As Marcus slipped out the back window, he could see torches moving through the streets. More of Severus's men converging on the tavern. The conspiracy was vast, but for the first time they had a direct link to the Senate. The question remained, how high did the corruption reach? The midnight hour had passed when a sharp tap at the window startled Marcus awake. He rose silently from his pallet in Horatius's back room, dagger already in hand. A street urchin peered through the narrow opening, his grimy face solemn in the moonlight. "Message for the centurion," the boy whispered, extending a small wax tablet through the bars. Marcus examined it without touching. "From whom?" "Dunno. Man in a hooded cloak paid me a denarius to deliver it. Said it's about the lady." Marcus passed the boy a small coin and took the tablet. After the messenger disappeared into the darkness, he carefully broke the unmarked seal. The message was brief, inscribed in a careful hand. Asterisk, the Praetorian Guard searches for the Valerian daughter. Senate decree. Accused of conspiracy with foreign agents. Severus testifies against her tomorrow. Southern Gate. Midnight. If you would save her, come alone. Asterisk. Marcus stared at the tablet, its implications clear. Severus had escalated his strategy. Instead of merely eliminating witnesses, he now wielded the Senate's authority as a weapon. Unexpected visitors at this hour rarely bring good news. Marcus turned to find Livia standing in the doorway, a light shawl wrapped around her shoulders. She had arrived at Horatius's home shortly after Marcus, having convinced Lucius to bring her here rather than return to her father's domus. "A warning." Marcus handed her the tablet. "Someone wants us to know you're in danger." She read it quickly, her expression hardening. An anonymous benefactor? Or a trap? Possibly both. Marcus moved to the small writing desk, gathering his few possessions. "Either way, we can't remain here. If the Praetorians have been mobilized, nowhere in Rome is safe. I should return to my father. His influence could." "Your father may not be able to protect you," Marcus interrupted. "Not if this truly comes from the Senate. Think, Livia. Who benefits most from discrediting both you and Senator Valerius simultaneously?" She was silent for a moment, her analytical mind working through the implications. "The same senator who controls those Campanian properties. The one Severus protects." "Precisely." Marcus finished gathering his meager belongings. "We need to wake Horatius. If Severus testifies tomorrow, we must counter with Milo's sworn statement." As they prepared to leave, Livia placed her hand on Marcus's arm. "You didn't ask why I chose to come here tonight rather than return home." Marcus paused. "I assumed you felt safer." "Partly," she acknowledged, "but mainly because I received my own warning this evening, from my father's closest advisor. He told me certain senators have been meeting privately, discussing how my reappearance has complicated matters. That my story of abduction and fraud threatens too many powerful interests." "Did he name these senators?" "No, but he mentioned something else." Livia's voice lowered. "My father has been investigating corruption independently for months. His appointment to the Eastern Trade Committee wasn't random. He requested it specifically to gain access to certain records." Marcus considered this new information. "Then your abduction may have been aimed at stopping his investigation, not just controlling him. Which means my father could also be in danger," Livia concluded. "We need to warn him. Too risky to approach the Valerian domus directly," Marcus cautioned. "The Praetorians will watch it closely. Then we send a message through channels they won't monitor." Livia's eyes reflected determination in the dim light. "My father's old military networks. The same ones that led you to find me." Marcus nodded slowly. "I know someone who can help. A former scout from the 10th Legion who now runs messages between military veterans." They worked quickly, composing a carefully coded warning to Senator Valerius. As Horatius prepared to deliver it to the messenger, Marcus found himself alone with Livia in the small courtyard. "If the Praetorians are truly searching for you," he said quietly, "we should consider leaving Rome." "And go where?" "Campania," Marcus suggested, "to investigate these mysterious properties ourselves. Find evidence that even the Senate couldn't ignore." Livia studied him in the moonlight, her patrician features resolute. You understand what you're proposing? Defying a potential Senate decree is treason. I've spent 25 years defending Rome, Marcus replied. Sometimes protecting the Republic means challenging those who corrupt it. A dangerous philosophy, Livia observed. No more dangerous than a senator's daughter who refuses to accept her proper place in society. He countered with the barest hint of a smile. Her answering smile contained equal measures of determination and something warmer. Then it seems we're well matched in our dangerous philosophies, centurion. Dawn painted the eastern sky as Marcus spread the forum map across Horatius's table. The detailed parchment, requisitioned from a military contact, showed every colonnade, temple, and official building surrounding Rome's political heart. He marked key positions with small stones as Livia, Senator Valerius, and Horatius looked on. Severnius will approach from here, Marcus indicated the Via Sacra, flanked by his clients and likely protected by hired guards disguised as attendants. His testimony before the Senate committee is scheduled for the 3rd hour. And you propose to intercept him here? Senator Valerius questioned, pointing to the marked position near the temple of Castor and Pollux. Yes, public enough to ensure witnesses, but controlled enough to manage the confrontation. The senator had arrived secretly before dawn, entering through the service entrance after receiving their warning. His presence lent gravity to their planning, though tension remained between his political caution and Marcus's more direct approach. This strategy carries significant risk, Valerius noted. If the Senate has truly issued a decree against Livia, they haven't, Horatius interrupted, returning from his morning information gathering. I've checked with contacts in the Curia. No such decree exists. The warning was either mistaken or deliberately misleading. A trap, then, Marcus concluded, or an attempt to flush us into the open, Livia suggested, to see how we'd react, what resources we command. Valerius studied his daughter with unconcealed pride. Your insight serves you well. Indeed, this false warning reveals something crucial. Our opponent fears public exposure more than private maneuvering, which is why we must force the issue into the forum, Marcus said, returning to the map. Severnius has hidden behind proxies and political allies. By confronting him publicly with evidence and witnesses, we deny him the shadows he requires. The senator nodded slowly. A battlefield strategy applied to politics. Interesting. He turned to Horatius. The legal foundation? Solid. The advocate confirmed. Milo's testimony is now properly registered. I've arranged for 3 additional witnesses to the fraudulent supply contracts to be present. And most importantly, the Treasury clerk Demetrius has secured the original manifest documents showing the discrepancies. Then we proceed, Valerius decided. But with one modification. He looked directly at Marcus. I will lead this confrontation, not you. Father, Livia began to protest. It must be me, Valerius insisted. A centurion challenging a wealthy merchant raises questions of motive and credibility. A senator demanding answers carries the weight of office. Marcus recognized the political logic, though it contradicted his military instincts to lead from the front. And Livia? Her safety remains my primary concern. She will remain here until the confrontation is complete, Valerius stated firmly. No, Livia countered, her tone brooking no argument. I am central to this case. My testimony regarding captivity and the fraudulent debt is essential. And makes you a target, Marcus reminded her. I've been a target since this began, she replied. Hiding won't change that. The debate continued until a compromise was reached. Livia would attend but remain protected in the Temple of Vesta until summoned, a location where even praetorians would hesitate to intrude given the sacred status of the Vestal Virgins. As they finalized the plan, Marcus took Livia aside. There's still time to reconsider, he said quietly. Once we do this, there's no retreating from the consequences. Livia studied the map, her finger tracing the forum's outline. 3 months ago, I watched from a barred window as people walked freely through the streets of Neapolis. I promised myself then that if I ever regained my freedom, I would never waste it in timidity. She looked up at him. "Would you have me break that promise now?" Marcus shook his head. "I would have you live to fulfill many more promises." "Then teach me to protect myself," she said simply. "You trained soldiers for years. Surely a senator's daughter can learn the basics of self-defense before midday." The request surprised him, though perhaps it shouldn't have. Since their first meeting, Livia had consistently defied expectations of patrician women. For the next hour, in Horatius's small courtyard, Marcus taught her rudimentary techniques. How to break a grip, strike vulnerable points, use an assailant's weight against them. She learned with remarkable quickness, her determined focus reminiscent of new recruits he had once trained. "You're a natural," he observed as she successfully escaped his demonstration hold. "I had motivation," she replied, slightly breathless, "and an excellent instructor." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the impending confrontation seemed distant. Then Senator Valerius called them inside to review final preparations. "It begins in 3 hours, he announced. "May the gods of Rome guide our pursuit of justice." Marcus nodded solemnly. In his experience, the gods helped those with the better strategy and stronger resolve. Today, he hoped, they had both. The forum buzzed with activity as citizens conducted daily business beneath the summer sun. Merchants hawked wares, advocates argued cases, and politicians moved purposefully between government buildings. None noticed the strategic positioning of certain figures: a scarred veteran near the Temple of Castor, an advocate casually reading documents by the rostra, a treasury clerk lingering near the tabularium. Marcus maintained his position, eyes fixed on the via sacra. His military tunic, worn publicly for the first time since his retirement, drew occasional glances of respect from passing veterans. The familiar weight of armor, and the short gladius at his hip felt right, as if he'd temporarily reclaimed his true identity. "Incoming," murmured Lucius Petronius, who stood nearby in his urban cohort uniform. "Severnius approaches with quite an entourage." The merchant's procession was indeed impressive. 8 lictors in front, a dozen clients following, and Severnius himself in an ostentatious toga bordered with expensive Tyrian purple. Beside him walked Servius Tadius, the magistrate they had identified as his Senate connection. As the group passed the appointed spot, Senator Valerius emerged from the shadow of the colonnade, flanked by 2 of his own lictors. "Gaius Severnius," he called, his voice carrying across the forum with practiced oratorical skill. "A moment of your time on a matter of public interest." The merchant paused, his expression carefully composed despite the unexpected confrontation. "Senator Valerius, I was just on my way to testify before the committee. Perhaps another time. The matter concerns your testimony." Valerius stepped closer, projecting calm authority. "Specifically, your accusations against my daughter." A small crowd began to gather, sensing political drama unfolding. Severnius glanced around, clearly uncomfortable with the public nature of the encounter but maintaining his composure. "My testimony merely recounts facts, Senator. If they prove uncomfortable for your family, that is regrettable but necessary for justice." "Interesting you should mention justice." Valerius gestured, and Horatius approached with his documents. "My advocate has uncovered evidence suggesting a rather different understanding of events." The praetor's ivory gavel appeared almost magically in Valerius's hand, a symbol of judicial authority that commanded immediate attention. "As a senior magistrate, I am invoking my right to convene an immediate preliminary hearing to address these contradictory claims before your Senate testimony." Severnius's confident smile faltered slightly. "This is highly irregular, Senator." "As is the false imprisonment of a Roman citizen," Valerius countered. "Unless you'd prefer I take these allegations directly to the consul?" The crowd had grown considerably, Roman citizens always eager for political theater. Severnius assessed the situation quickly, aware that refusing a public hearing would appear suspicious. "I have nothing to hide," he declared loudly for the benefit of onlookers. "Though I protest this ambush and its obvious attempt to delay my testimony. Then you'll welcome the opportunity to address these charges directly." Valerius turned to his lictors. Clear space at the rostra. This hearing begins immediately. Marcus watched as the impromptu tribunal took shape. Benches were arranged, the area secured, and curious citizens pressed closer. He caught Horatius's eye, receiving a subtle nod confirming that their witnesses were in position. Within 30 minutes, a remarkable transformation had occurred. What began as an informal confrontation had evolved into a legitimate legal proceeding, with the praetor from the nearby Basilica Julia agreeing to oversee the hearing given the serious nature of the allegations. Severus sat with his advocates, outwardly confident but betrayed by the constant whispered consultations with Tadius. Senator Valerius presented the formal charge that Severus had orchestrated the kidnapping and fraudulent enslavement of Livia Valeria as part of a broader conspiracy to defraud the Republic through military supply contracts. The praetor called for opening statements, his gavel commanding silence from the now substantial crowd. "Citizens of Rome," Horatius began, "what you will hear today is a tale of ambition unchecked by honor, of greed unfettered by patriotism. We will present evidence that Gaius Severus not only arranged the abduction of a senator's daughter, but has systematically defrauded the legions upon which Rome's security depends." Severus's advocate countered with equal gravity. These sensational claims mask a simpler truth. A powerful senator seeking to distract from his daughter's indiscretions by attacking a respected businessman whose only crime was securing contracts through fair competition. As preliminary arguments continued, Marcus noticed movement near the Temple of Vesta. Livia had emerged, accompanied by 2 Vestal attendants whose presence guaranteed her protection. Their eyes met briefly across the forum, and he nodded slightly. Everything proceeded according to plan. The praetor called for the first witness. Demetrius approached, clutching the treasury documents that would begin unraveling Severus's carefully constructed facade. "Present your evidence," the praetor commanded, his gavel poised to maintain order as the hearing entered its crucial phase. The midday sun beat down upon the forum as Demetrius completed his testimony. The treasury clerk had meticulously explained each discrepancy in the military supply contracts, pointing out altered figures and irregular authorizations with the precision of a man who had spent decades working with Rome's financial records. "So these documents," the praetor clarified, holding up the manifests, "show that only 500 shields reached Pontus, while records claim 800 were shipped?" "Correct, praetor," Demetrius confirmed. "And similar discrepancies exist across dozens of shipments over the past 3 years. Severus leaned forward, his face flushed with barely controlled anger. His advocate rose for cross-examination, attacking Demetrius's credibility rather than the evidence itself. "You serve at the pleasure of Senator Valerius's allies, do you not?" the advocate insinuated. "Your position was secured through his patronage?" "I earned my position through 30 years of service," Demetrius replied evenly, "beginning as a slave scribe and rising through demonstrated competence." As the questioning continued, Marcus noticed movement at the forum's edge. A group of men in worn military tunics had gathered, watching the proceedings with particular interest. One carried a faded campaign banner from the Mithridatic Wars. Recognition dawned as Marcus identified faces he hadn't seen in years, veterans from his former century. The advocate finished his unsuccessful attempt to discredit Demetrius, and Horatius called their next witness. The tribunal calls Gaius Aelius Bellator. A weathered man of military bearing approached, his gait slightly uneven from an old battlefield injury. Severus visibly paled. "Identify yourself for the record," the praetor instructed. "Gaius Aelius Bellator, former Primus Pilus of the 4th Legion, currently serving as quartermaster for the eastern provinces." Horatius proceeded carefully. "And what brings you to Rome, centurion?" "I arrived 3 days ago with inventory reports showing systematic shortages in military supplies. Upon hearing of this tribunal, I felt duty bound to testify." "Objection," Severus's advocate interjected. "This witness was not on the disclosed list." "Because we were unaware of his arrival," Horatius countered smoothly. "The gods themselves seem to favor justice today." The praetor considered briefly. "I'll allow the testimony. Proceed, centurion." Bellator's evidence proved devastating. First-hand accounts of legionaries facing combat with substandard equipment, of reinforcements delayed due to missing supplies, of frontier posts weakened by shortages. Throughout his testimony, he repeatedly identified Severnius's company as the supplier responsible. 3 soldiers from my century died last winter when their shields, thin-wooded practice models substituted for battle-grade equipment, failed against Parthian arrows, Bellator concluded grimly. Roman blood paid for someone's profit. The crowd murmured angrily, particularly the gathered veterans who understood the lethal consequences of such fraud. During the midday recess, Marcus approached the group of veterans he'd recognized. "Unexpected to see you here, brothers," he greeted them. Their leader, Rufus Cantus, clasped his arm in the traditional soldier's greeting. "Word travels fast when one of our own stands against corruption. The old campaign banner still rallies the 10th. How many have come?" 38 so far, Rufus replied. "More arriving hourly. Veterans from 3 legions, all supplied by Severnius's companies." Marcus nodded, deeply moved by this show of solidarity. "Your presence honors me." "Not just you," Rufus gestured across the forum where Livia stood in conversation with Horatius. "The lady has her own supporters." Indeed, several patrician women had gathered near Livia, wives and daughters of senators who had defied convention to attend a public tribunal. The political message was clear. The Valerian daughters' cause had garnered support across class lines. Meanwhile, Senator Valerius had been pulled aside by a Senate messenger. The conversation appeared tense, with Valerius repeatedly shaking his head in refusal. When he rejoined their group, his expression was grim. "The Senate Committee on Procedure requests an immediate adjournment," he reported, "ostensibly to review jurisdictional questions. Severnius's allies attempt to derail the tribunal," Horatius concluded. "Precisely. They've also offered a compromise. If we agree to conclude today's proceedings without further witnesses, charges against Severnius will be handled, appropriately, through internal Senate investigation." "A burial, not an investigation," Marcus observed. "Indeed." Valerius's eyes narrowed. "But they've overplayed their hand. This public attempt to obstruct justice only confirms how high this conspiracy reaches." As the tribunal prepared to resume, Livia approached Marcus. "Something's happening with Severnius," she murmured, nodding toward the merchant. Severnius was engaged in heated conversation with Tadius, their gestures becoming increasingly agitated. Finally, the merchant shoved a tablet into his accomplice's hands and stormed toward the exit. "He's attempting to flee," Marcus realized, already moving to intercept. "No," Livia caught his arm. "Let him try. We have urban cohort officers at every exit, and his flight will only confirm his guilt to the crowd." Sure enough, within moments, a commotion erupted as Severnius found his path blocked by Lucius Petronius and 4 urban cohort guards. The merchant's furious protests carried across the forum, drawing all eyes to his attempted escape. The praetor's gavel pounded for order. "Guards, return the accused to this tribunal immediately." Severnius stood defiant before the tribunal, his attempted flight having only strengthened the case against him. The praetor's patience had visibly thinned, his ivory gavel rapping sharply for silence as the afternoon session resumed. "Before we continue," Horatius announced, "I call Titus Cassianus to testify." A murmur rippled through the crowd as a thin, bruised man limped forward. Marcus straightened in recognition. His missing orderly had been found. "Titus," he whispered, moving closer to the tribunal area. The man's condition spoke of recent mistreatment, but his eyes were clear and determined as he took the oath. Severnius's face had gone ashen. "State your name and recent occupation," the praetor instructed. "Titus Cassianus, former military orderly to centurion Marcus Severus, recently employed as inventory clerk at the Austrian warehouses." "And how did you come to be in that position?" Horatius asked. "After my military service concluded, I sought employment in Ostia. Given my experience with military logistics, I secured a position inventorying shipments bound for eastern provinces." Please tell the tribunal what you discovered in that roll. Titus drew a deep breath. 3 months ago, I noticed discrepancies between manifest quantities and actual goods. When I reported this to my supervisor, he instructed me to ignore them. He paused. Instead, I began keeping my own records. Each night, I documented the true contents of shipments compared to official manifests. Horatius presented a bound ledger to the praetor. The hidden account ledger kept by Titus Cassianus, recovered this morning from a strongbox in Severnius's Austrian office by urban cohort officers executing a search warrant. The ledger passed to the praetor, who examined it with growing concern. These entries are meticulous. Dates, quantities, values, all recorded in detail. And the final pages, praetor, Horatius directed, show something even more significant. The praetor turned to the indicated section, his eyebrows rising. Payment records? Yes, Titus confirmed. I discovered a second set of accounting books in a secured room. These pages record payments distributed to various officials, identified by code names. How did you determine who these code names represented? The pattern of payments corresponded with approval signatures on supply contracts. I cross-referenced them with Senate committee memberships. Severnius erupted. This is fabricated evidence. Slander against respected officials. Silence. The praetor's gavel crashed down. You will have opportunity to respond in turn. He returned his attention to Titus. Continue. After making these discoveries, I contacted my former centurion for advice. The next day, I was seized by unknown men, beaten, and held prisoner in a villa outside Rome until yesterday, when I was moved to a warehouse in preparation for transport to Sicily. And how did you escape? I didn't, Titus replied simply. Roman soldiers freed me during a raid early this morning. All eyes turned to Senator Valerius, who stood. At dawn today, based on information developed through this investigation, I authorized urban cohort officers to search several properties connected to Severnius. They discovered not only Titus Cassianus but also 3 other individuals held against their will, all witnesses to various aspects of this conspiracy. The revelation sent a shock wave through the crowd. Servius Tadius, sensing the shifting tide, attempted to distance himself by moving away from Severnius, only to find his path blocked by urban cohort officers. The ledger contains one more critical piece of evidence, Horatius continued, turning to the final pages. Records of property purchases in Campania, acquired through proxy owners but ultimately controlled by a single beneficiary. He paused dramatically. Senator Lucius Appius Nero. The name hung in the air like a thunderclap. Lucius Appius Nero, a senior member of the Senate Military Affairs Committee and long-standing rival of Senator Valerius. The same Senator Nero, Horatius continued relentlessly, who personally approved Severnius's supply contracts, who advocated against Senator Valerius's appointment to the Eastern Trade Committee, and who, according to testimony we will present, met privately with Severnius the day before Livia Valeria's abduction. Chaos erupted in the forum as implications cascaded through the crowd. The praetor pounded his gavel repeatedly, struggling to maintain order. Amid the tumult, Marcus made his way to Titus, clasping his former orderly's arm in wordless gratitude. Nearby, Livia stood with her father, their vindication tempered by the gravity of exposing corruption reaching into the highest levels of Roman government. Senator Nero is not present to defend himself against these allegations, the praetor finally noted when order was restored. No, Senator Valerius agreed, because at this moment, he is attempting to board a ship for Greece. Urban cohort officers are moving to detain him at the port of Ostia. The praetor's expression hardened. This tribunal will recess until tomorrow to allow for Senator Nero's appearance. Gaius Severnius and Servius Tadius will remain in custody. His gavel fell with finality. This proceeding is adjourned until dawn. As the crowd dispersed, buzzing with the day's revelations, Marcus caught Livia's eye across the forum. Her slight smile conveyed everything words could not: vindication, relief, and something deeper that had grown between them through shared danger and purpose. Dawn light bathed the forum in golden hues as citizens gathered for the tribunal's final day. The night had brought dramatic developments. Senator Nero, apprehended attempting to board a merchant vessel at Ostia, now stood alongside Severnius and Tadius before the tribunal. His senatorial toga, normally pristine, appeared rumpled from his night in custody, his dignified bearing undermined by the visible shock of his circumstances. The praetor called the proceedings to order, holding the Freedom Declaration document that would formalize Livia's status once the judgment was rendered. This tribunal has heard extensive evidence regarding multiple serious allegations, he began. Before rendering judgment, does any accused wish to make a final statement? Senator Nero stepped forward, his voice carrying the practiced authority of decades in the Senate. What occurs here today is unprecedented. A sitting senator detained without formal Senate approval, based on evidence of questionable provenance. The evidence was recovered from your co-conspirator's own records, the praetor noted dryly. Alleged co-conspirator, Nero corrected smoothly. I remind this tribunal that I have served Rome for 30 years. My contributions to the Republic are documented and substantial. These accusations, orchestrated by my political rival Quintus Valerius, conveniently arise as the Senate prepares to vote on provincial governorships. Marcus watched from his position near Livia and Senator Valerius, noting how Nero attempted to reframe the entire case as political persecution. It was a strategy he had seen battlefield commanders employ when cornered, changing the terrain of engagement. Severnius spoke next, abandoning dignity for self-preservation. I was merely following established practices. Every military supplier maintains similar arrangements with officials. I'm being singled out because Senator Valerius needs a scapegoat. Only Tadius remained silent, his defeat evident in slumped shoulders and downcast eyes. After their statements, the praetor consulted briefly with his legal advisors before addressing the assembled crowd. Having considered all evidence and testimony, this tribunal finds the following. Gaius Severnius is guilty of fraud against the Republic, false imprisonment of a Roman citizen, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. The merchant's face drained of color as the praetor continued. Servius Tadius is guilty of abetting these crimes and misusing his magisterial authority. Senator Lucius Appius Nero is found to have compelling evidence against him warranting a full senatorial inquiry into corruption, treason, and violation of his sacred oath of office. The praetor lifted the official declaration. Regarding Livia Valeria, this tribunal formally recognizes her status as a freeborn citizen of Rome whose rights were criminally violated. All documents purporting debt or servitude against her are hereby declared fraudulent and void. A cheer rose from the crowd as the praetor outlined the penalties. Severnius's property and business interests forfeit to the state. Tadius stripped of office and fined. Senator Nero to face the Senate's internal disciplinary process. More significantly, all military supply contracts connected to their conspiracy would be reviewed and potentially invalidated. As the formal proceedings concluded, the forum buzzed with activity. Senators huddled in concerned groups, merchants whispered about market implications, and citizens discussed the unprecedented public exposure of corruption at Rome's highest levels. Senator Valerius found himself surrounded by colleagues offering support or seeking to distance themselves from the scandal. Marcus stood apart, watching as Rome's political machinery began adjusting to the new reality. It seems justice prevailed, Livia said, joining him at the forum's edge. Roman justice, Marcus replied. Nero will likely retain some influence despite everything. The Senate protects its own. Perhaps, she acknowledged, but his power is broken, and others will think twice before attempting similar schemes. They watched as urban cohort officers led Severnius away. The merchant's eyes found them briefly, filled with impotent hatred before he disappeared into the crowd. What happens now? Marcus asked quietly. A celebration at my father's villa tonight, Livia replied. The political necessity of demonstrating that the Valerian family emerges strengthened, not diminished, by these events. I meant for you, Marcus clarified. Livia's expression softened. My father has already received 3 marriage proposals from senatorial families seeking alliance with the Valerii. Our stock rises with our vindication. Marcus absorbed this information with a carefully neutral expression. Advantageous for your family. Politically, yes. She studied him, noting the distance he had already begun placing between them. You're planning to leave Rome. It wasn't a question. Marcus nodded. My purpose here is complete. Perhaps it's time to consider that farm in Campania after all. I see. Livia maintained her composure, though something flickered behind her eyes. Then you'll attend tonight's celebration to receive my father's formal gratitude before departing? Of course, Marcus agreed, though they both recognized the invitation as the beginning of a farewell. As they parted, Senator Valerius approached his daughter, laying a paternal hand on her shoulder. You've brought honor to our family through your courage, he said proudly. Now we must look to securing your future appropriately. Livia watched Marcus's scarred figure disappear into the forum crowd. Yes, father, she replied distantly. My future requires careful consideration indeed. Senator Valerius's villa glowed with lamplight as Rome's elite gathered to celebrate the family's triumph over adversity. In the triclinium, senators reclined while discussing the day's unprecedented events. Their wives and daughters occupied the atrium, where conversations centered on the scandal's social implications rather than its political ones. Livia stood in her father's study, staring at the marriage proposal document he had just presented. The formal offer from the Cornelii family, whose patriarch controlled extensive trade routes in Sicily, represented exactly the kind of political alliance her father had spent his career cultivating. The terms are exceptionally generous, Senator Valerius noted. Young Cornelius is well-educated, moderately handsome, and already secured as questor for next year. The match would strengthen our faction considerably. Livia placed the document on her father's desk. And my preferences in this matter are important, he assured her, though his tone suggested otherwise. But duty to family must be considered paramount, especially after recent events. Our name requires reinforcement through strategic alliance. Our name was reinforced by exposing corruption and seeking justice, Livia countered. Surely that carries more weight than a marriage contract. Senator Valerius sighed, his expression softening. Livia, I understand these past months have been transformative for you. Your ordeal and its resolution have shown your exceptional character. But Rome functions through alliances, not individual achievements. And what of personal happiness? Does that factor into your calculations? Her father's eyes narrowed slightly. You speak of the centurion. Livia met his gaze directly. Marcus Severus risked everything to secure justice, not just for me, but for Rome itself. His courage and integrity surpass many who wear the senatorial stripe. I don't dispute his character, Valerius conceded. I've acknowledged his service appropriately with rewards and patronage. But surely you understand the impossibility of anything beyond that. Because he lacks the proper ancestry, the political connections, the wealth. All of those reasons, yes. The senator's voice hardened. For 20 generations, our family has served Rome. Each marriage, each political alliance, each career advancement carefully considered for its impact on the Valerian legacy. Would you discard centuries of tradition for momentary sentiment? Before Livia could respond, a commotion arose from the atrium. A servant appeared at the study door, his expression urgent. Forgive the interruption, Senator. An armed man has entered the villa grounds. The guards are in pursuit. Valerius rose immediately. Secure my daughter. Livia followed her father despite his protest, entering the atrium as guards dragged in a bloodied man dressed in nondescript clothing. She recognized him immediately, one of Severnius's personal bodyguards. Found him scaling the garden wall with this? A guard reported, presenting a slim, poisoned dagger clearly meant for assassination. The would-be killer glared at Livia. Severnius sends his regards before departure. Departure? Senator Valerius demanded. He's in custody awaiting transfer to the Mamertine. The man's bloody smile revealed broken teeth. Not anymore. The implications sent the gathering into chaos. Senator Valerius dispatched messengers to the urban cohort while ordering his household guards to secure the villa. As patrician guests hurriedly departed, Livia realized someone was missing from the commotion. "Where is Marcus?" she asked Horatius, who had remained calm amidst the panic. "He never arrived," the advocate replied. "I assumed he'd changed his mind about attending." Cold fear gripped Livia. If Severnius had escaped custody and sent an assassin here, what might he have planned for Marcus, the man most responsible for his downfall? Without hesitation, she slipped away from the guards and hurried to her chambers. Discarding her formal stola for a simple tunic and cloak, she retrieved the dagger Marcus had taught her to use. The lessons in Horatius's courtyard now seemed prophetic rather than precautionary. Her father found her as she prepared to leave through the servants' entrance. "What madness is this?" he demanded. "Marcus is in danger," she replied simply, securing the dagger beneath her cloak. "The urban cohort will handle Severnius," Valerius insisted. "This is not your concern." "It became my concern the moment Marcus risked everything to save me." Livia's voice was calm but resolute, just as it became his concern when he had no obligation to act. "You would risk your life, your position, your future." "Yes," she interrupted, "just as he did for me." Senator Valerius stared at his daughter, suddenly seeing not the obedient patrician child he had raised, but a woman transformed by adversity into someone both familiar and foreign. "At least take guards," he finally said. "They would only draw attention. Lucius Petronius waits outside, Marcus's former optio," she added at her father's questioning look. "He knows where Marcus lives." As she turned to leave, Valerius called after her. "Livia, whatever happens, return safely." She nodded once, recognizing the concession in his words. Not approval, but acknowledgement of her choice. Outside, Lucius waited with 2 horses. "Severnius has escaped," she told him without preamble, "and Marcus may be his target." "Then we ride now," Lucius replied grimly, helping her mount, "and pray to Mars we're not too late." The carved stone tablet gleamed in the morning sun, its freshly chiseled inscription commemorating the Senate's decree. "Justice prevails where courage stands vigilant." The monument erected at the Forum's edge represented Rome's official acknowledgement of the conspiracy that had threatened both military security and legal principle. Marcus traced the letters with weathered fingers, reflecting on the week's tumultuous events. Severnius had been recaptured attempting to flee through the Ostian harbor disguised as a merchant sailor. Senator Nero faced expulsion from the Senate, his properties confiscated. Most importantly, the military supply system was under comprehensive review, with veterans like Bellator appointed to ensure legionaries received the equipment their lives depended upon. "It seems they've made you part of history," Livia observed, approaching from the direction of the Senate House. Her simple white stola contrasted with the elaborate garments she typically wore for public appearances, yet somehow enhanced her natural dignity. "A footnote at most," Marcus replied. "In a decade, few will remember the details. Perhaps, but the principle endures." She gestured toward the tablet's inscription. "This stands not just for our case, but for the ideal that Rome's justice extends to all citizens, regardless of wealth or station." They walked together through the morning bustle of the Forum, where life had largely returned to normal despite the political earthquake of recent days. Merchants haggled, citizens conducted business, and the eternal rhythm of Rome continued uninterrupted. "You didn't attend your father's announcement this morning," Marcus noted. Livia's expression remained composed, though something flickered behind her eyes. "I felt my presence might distract from the policy matters at hand." "And these policy matters include your betrothal to Cornelius?" "You've heard, then." Marcus nodded. Rome has talked of little else since the Senate session ended. They paused near the temple of Castor and Pollux, where their journey had effectively begun days earlier with the confrontation of Severnius. The symmetry wasn't lost on either of them. "My father announced the negotiations this morning," Livia confirmed, "though the final contract remains unsigned." "It's a sensible match," Marcus offered, his voice carefully neutral. The Cornelii bring significant political advantages to your family. Indeed, every practical consideration satisfied. Livia turned to face him directly. And yet, I declined the match. The simple statement hung between them, its implications expanding into the space their careful propriety had maintained. Your father must be disappointed, Marcus finally said. Initially, yes. A smile touched Livia's lips. Until I presented an alternative that serves our family interests while honoring my preferences. Marcus raised an eyebrow, waiting for her to continue. The Campanian properties confiscated from Nero require management by someone with both military experience and unimpeachable integrity. Someone who understands supply logistics and can restore proper order to the region. Livia's eyes held his. The Senate approved my father's nomination this morning. Understanding dawned. He nominated me for the position. With the rank of equestrian and administrative authority over the military supply chain from Campania to Brundisium. Livia's composure slipped slightly, revealing genuine pleasure. My father acknowledges that practical competence serves Rome better than political connections. And this alternative you presented regarding your marriage? That my presence in Campania would strengthen the Valerian oversight of this critical region. Her directness was refreshing after days of political maneuvering. That a marriage alliance based on proven loyalty and shared values might serve our family better than one built solely on political calculation. Your father agreed to this? He is a pragmatist above all, Livia replied. And recent events have demonstrated which qualities truly matter when facing adversity. Marcus was silent for a moment, absorbing the implications of what she proposed. The Senate and people of Rome may not understand such an unconventional choice. The same Senate and people who watched a veiled slave transformed into a senator's daughter? Livia challenged. I believe Rome appreciates the unexpected when it serves justice and honor. Marcus took her hands in his, protocol momentarily forgotten. In 25 years serving Rome, I never sought recognition or position. I did my duty as I understood it, nothing more. And that, Livia said softly, is precisely why you deserve both. Around them, the Forum continued its eternal business, citizens pursuing lives made possible by the laws and principles they had fought to defend. A patrician woman and a scarred veteran stood together in its center, their private moment unnoticed amid the grandeur of Rome. The crowd laughed when you bought the veiled woman, Livia reminded him. They fell silent when you revealed her identity. What will they say, I wonder, when they see what becomes of us next? Let them wonder, Marcus replied, his scarred face transformed by a rare smile. We have more important work to do.